Thank you for joining me. It's good to be back on Monday after a few days off from day texts and the CW Jaw Talk show. As most of you know, I took this past Saturday off, but I'll be back this coming Saturday for another CW Jaw Talk show, and I will have the details for that show a little bit later in the week. Before we get into today's text, as some of you may have noticed, although I just uploaded it, this weekend I only had the time. I was going to prepare a few clips from some of my earlier shows, but the first clip I came across from my first CW Jaw Talk show regarding the Miller-Urey experiment and evolution and the eternality of life, I had to revise a paper that I wrote back in 2010. It's the Elihu Online Papers #1. And I updated it this past weekend and cited several additional sources and reworded some of the material so I think it's more complete and a better read. So I've uploaded that paper to the Elihu Books Topical Index and the Elihu Online Papers page. And I've also embedded the link in the description of the video that I uploaded where I talk about this Miller-Urey experiment and some of the things that I wrote about back in 2010. So now they're both together, which is the way I felt it had to be before I could release that clip on Miller-Urey. I wanted to have my Elihu Online Papers paper on Miller-Urey updated. So I had to spend the weekend doing that. It wasn't a simple thing. I had to go through it and obtain a few additional sources and then integrate them into the material, update a few of the images at the end since they were no longer accessible, some of them, and then update the links. So that took all weekend, at least in terms of my time for doing these shows. And so I will continue to go back through the earlier shows. I know there's more that we talked about that I could probably make some videos for. But in any case, I put up the Miller-Urey video and revised Elihu Online Papers so that the two of those together now should provide everybody with a pretty effective means for dealing with people who rely on Miller-Urey or who believe in evolution and or who are just a little confused about how we got here. So I hope the article and the video will help us to reach more people so that we can explain to them what's been going on and how these false conclusions that some of these scientists, look at the quote that I make at the very end of this paper, this revised paper, and you'll see that even other scientists realize just how stupid they can be sometimes. And so in the case of Miller-Urey, they excluded themselves from their own experiment in terms of their conclusions. So it's no wonder that they didn't end up attributing the production to themselves. And so in any case, we have a similar problem where it concerns God and our existence. But those things are up now. So you have the video, you have the revised Elihu Online Papers #1, paper #1. And so I'll continue to go through the Elihu Online Papers and make revisions as necessary. So, okay, so that's been done. That was a load off for me. I felt really good to update and revise the Miller-Urey paper that I did and then combine it with this video. So got that done just this morning, in fact, because I had to take the time necessary to get it right. And I think I did. So if you notice anything in the revised paper that you want to talk about, let me know. Okay, let's get on to today's text. So we're back on regular day text schedule. I'll be here this entire week, 5 a.m. Pacific Standard Time, working our way up to Saturday's CW Jaw Talk show. So today is our last text from 1 Timothy, and then tomorrow we'll start 2 Timothy. I'll give some information about the letter to 2 Timothy, and then we'll get into the day text. But let's conclude with 1 Timothy this morning. All right, so 1 Timothy chapter 6, verses 17 through 19. And also what I'm going to do from now on, instead of blocking the live stream and then re-uploading it, you notice I just went right into the show when I started the video, so that I'm just going to let the live stream video stay on the channel as the day text show. We'll see how that works, and rather than re-uploading the video. So we're going to do that starting today. All right, let's get to today's text. So verses 17 through 19, 1 Timothy chapter 6. And this is what it says. To those who are rich in the present age, you must not be arrogant, nor hope on unreliable wealth. Instead, hope because of God, the one who offers us everything, as much as we need for enjoyment. You are to do good, to become rich in honorable works, to be generous, sharing. Those who do these things are gaining a beautiful foundation as treasure for themselves in the future, so they may grab a hold of the real life. Let me talk about that last part here for just a moment. You know, in this world, you often hear people, they talk about the life. And what they mean by that is often the death. They mean basically doing whatever they can to pleasure themselves at their own or other people's expense. Usually by selling something that is harmful to others or their bodies, or in some way involving yourself into an activity that is going to hurt you in the future or hurt others immediately. But they benefit from it. You know, they get money, power, wealth. So some people call this the life. I don't see it as life at all, because every single person I've met who's a part of that kind of life looks like they're on the doorstep of death, at least in terms of their happiness. I've met very few genuinely happy people who spend their whole life trying to get as much as they can for themselves without any concern for other people. I've never seen anyone genuinely happy because of living like that. I've seen people happy because of living the quote-unquote life temporarily, because we all can experience enjoyment and pleasure, right? Who doesn't want to do that? But what's the cost? What are you sacrificing for the life? I think what you're sacrificing, or what we end up sacrificing when we choose that way, is our life. And that's why I say it's not the life, it's the death, the slow death. Either way, when you do good, when you are honorable, honest is what it also means, and generous, those are the kinds of things that never will end up causing you pain. You know, sometimes maybe you're nice or you're generous to someone you regret because they didn't appreciate it. That's different. I'm talking about the benefit, the lasting benefit that we experience and receive by doing good as a practice, by being honorable as a practice, by being generous and sharing as a practice, while also being cautious so that people do not take advantage of our generosity. Okay, we don't want to be stupid. But we also don't want to be arrogant. Now let's get back to verse 17. We kind of went in reverse order here, but that's okay, because I wanted to get back to verse 17 near the end, since it tied in with last week's text. And I talked a little bit about how being wealthy can be difficult, because often the means by which we pursue wealth can put us in conflict with Jah, or when it comes to treating others the way we want to be treated. Many times people will take advantage of others so that they get the wealth. So there's a conflict. Okay, but you can still be rich without being arrogant, without being too hopeful on material possessions. We know that because Paul's writing to Christians, Jews in the first century, who were rich. And so it's not a question of whether or not you have wealth. It's a question of how that wealth is affecting you. Are you putting all your trust in your wealth? Because remember, we talked about in the last day text video, none of it goes with us. We came into the world naked, we go out naked. And we may be buried in our clothes. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about when we leave our body, our spirit. That's why Paul in 1 Corinthians 15 talks about how it's sort of like being naked until God clothes our spirit with a body, a new body. But the body that we die with and the spirit we leave with has none of the wealth, riches, and the material things that we accumulate in this world. We do need them. They do provide enjoyment, and God makes sure that we have enjoyment. It's not about not enjoying life. It's about whether or not the joy you're getting from life is worth what you're giving up to receive it. If you're giving up your life to get temporary enjoyment, is that really the life? It doesn't seem that way. It may be enjoyment that you exchange for part of your life. But really, life, the quality of living and being satisfied, comes from doing good, from being honorable and generous. I've seen very few people who are anxious to be rich and who are really, at the same time, peaceful with their life, because the anxiety can destabilize you. So if you end up being rich, or if you're skillful in your work, like the Bible tells us, and you happen to stand before kings because of it, there's nothing wrong with that. Use your wealth, privilege, and any power you are given to do good, to help other people, and to praise Jah. Then He will give you more to work with. All right, so some good things for us to consider today. And I'm glad to be back with our day text. Thank you for joining me. I will be back tomorrow for another day text. We'll start 2 Timothy. And then this video will be online as soon as we're done here. I've uploaded the new video on Miller-Urey and my revised EOP1 paper, so I highly encourage you to take a look at that. The paper's not as easy of a read as watching the video, but that's why we have both now. So either way, whatever we can do to highlight Jah, to praise Him for what He's done for us, which is everything, that's what we should do today. So I encourage you in that way, and I will see you all tomorrow for another day text. Until then, may Jah bless you in Jesus' name. Thank you.